Good morning, everyone. So, welcome to our initiative Mission Mains 2022, where we'll be discussing the most expected questions from the point of view of Mains 2022. So, this is the course calendar that we have. So, Monday Polity, Tuesday History. So, like that, we'll be going, and the video will be uploaded at 7:30 a.m. Now, just in case you have doubts, you want to discuss more, so you can fill out the Google form, and this is completely free initiative, valid till 2022. Okay, so today being Monday, today being week 1, so we are doing the polity and governance. And these are the topics that have been predominantly in news, so we'll be covering them first. So first topic is defection, and defection, I think we all know Maharashtra incident that has taken place, so that has brought the issue of defection to the spotlight. So we are doing this, and previously also UPSC has asked us a question on defection. So that theme was that the anti-defection law has affected the role of the MPs and the MLAs. So that was the theme that UPSC had asked. And if you go to any mock initiatives or these website answer writing initiatives, the questions are on similar lines. They may say about the role of the MPs and the MLAs being curbed, or they may talk about the unintended consequences. Now this is a different iteration, this question. It is asking us about the critically examine the success of anti-defection law. Obviously inspired from this article also, that defection is continuing to take place. We see defection not just now, we saw defection taking place especially after 2017, where these state elections had taken place to Madhya Pradesh, Goa. So multiple states were having these elections, and almost every state, nobody was having a clear mandate. So almost every state we saw defection taking place, allegations are there. So this theme is important, right? We have to work on this side of defection also. So first part is this, then it says highlight its relevance in the multi-party parliamentary system. Basically meaning that when there are multiple parties which are contesting the same election, then no party, it's not no party, but parties are not able to get a clearer majority. So when they are not close to majority figure, then there is possibilities that these people, they try to buy or sell MPs, MLAs and get a greater share of people representing and then form the government. Okay, now let us see how we can structure this in our answer. So naturally, when the question says critically examine the success of anti-defection law, we have to bring out various facets of anti-defection. We will have to explain the anti-defection law, right? Anti-defection law. But before starting with anti-defection, we have to bring about the context as to why we brought in the anti-defection law. So that aspect has to come in the answer. Now you can start your answer by introducing itself, where you can say that the anti-defection law was brought via the 52nd Amendment, which introduced the 10th schedule of a constitution to stop the practice of frequent flow crossing, turncoating, switching political parties by the elected politicians and political parties, typically for illegitimate reasons. And this has been, in Indian context, it is denoted by the expression Aaya Ram, Gaya Ram. So in the introduction, you can talk about the context over here. You can briefly say that this has been able to curb the issue of defection to some extent, but given the recent events, be it the upcoming this Maharashtra incident or the event in the 2017, we see the continuation of the defection taking place. So this introduction, if you can do it in 3 lines, right, 2 to 3 lines if you can mention, so this gives a clear indication to the examiner, whosoever is reading, that you have a clear-cut idea of the concept, what this question is trying to answer. So that will be a great advantage if you can do that. Okay. So once you're done with your introduction, you can talk about the anti-defection law. You can tell us about the provisions of the anti-defection law. So you can elaborate this a bit more. So you have the provisions over here. So the defection law says that a person who is believed to have voluntarily given, who's defected, he's said to have voluntarily given up his membership, which can be on account of a person obviously resigning or siding with a particular political party or going contrary to the directions of his party. So on such conditions, a person may lose his membership to the house, or the person may be disqualified. And this decision is that of the chairman or the speaker of the house. So again, in 3 lines, try to summarize this thing. So you have to give a brief overview, you don't have to give a detailed point over here. Okay, so you give the provisions of the anti-defection provisions briefly. Then you can explain the shortcomings of the anti-defection law. So what are the shortcomings? So you can easily mention that there are concerns that one, obviously we've already mentioned the issue of defection taking place unabated. So beyond this, we have the issue of that it curbs the role of the independent MPs and the MLAs. So MPs and MLAs are only seen as representative of the political parties, but not as representatives of the people. Right. So that aspect of the MPs, MLAs is undermined over here. Their ability to dissent on policy matters is also curbed over here. So that is a problem. Furthermore, this anti-defection law, next point, you can say that it allows for wholesale defection. The clause of exception to defection with reference to merger and splits, it allows that if 2/3 MPs or elected, they are elected of course, if they decide to merge or they decide to split, then it is permitted, it will not come under the purview of defection. So this clause has been repeatedly used to legitimize defection or to escape the disqualification under defection. Then the role of speaker has also been under question because the speaker itself is from a particular political party, they have political interest. So this you can do and then conclude by, so this I think you just close over here, you bring out the shortcomings, and you can also bring one more aspect, the issue of pre-poll, that the anti-defection law does not have the provision of pre-poll political fronts, right, when they have the pre-poll alliances. For example, this very Shiv Sena thing that take place. So when the elections are taken place, Shiv Sena and the BJP had a pre-poll alliance. So people obviously who wanted this type of government, they know ideologically they are similar, so they had voted in accordance here. But later on, Shiv Sena broke this pre-poll alliance and went with the Congress party when they had differences with BJP. But people had voted for this. So pre-poll alliances should also be treated as political parties. So this aspect also you can bring out. Okay, so this you mentioned the shortcomings over here. Now bring out the aspect that the anti-defection law is still relevant. Anti-defection law is relevant especially in Indian polity, which is a multi-party parliamentary system. Now you bring out why, right? Because no party is able to clearly form government, there is no majority, it always provides opportunity for flow crossing, turn coating, all those things. Okay, then what should be done, right? Then bring out the aspect, you can briefly bring out, and this question is not asking us this aspect, but you can bring out this aspect that we need to reform this law on the lines of certain recommendations. Maybe we can bring out some reforms. So we have certain recommendations over here. So Dinesh Goswami committee, as it says that the clause of voluntarily giving up membership could be limited to certain cases only. For example, especially those cases where the government may lose its majority, right? So on the, for example, motion of no confidence, so when one votes against this. On other sides, the members should have the liberty of criticizing the government also or their policies, so that should be permitted. Then we have very interesting, the law commission over here. It says that exemption to splits and mergers should be deleted. So this should be deleted because it is already taking place. Pre-poll electoral fronts should be treated as political parties. And political parties should limit issuance of whips to instances only when the government is in danger. Then we have the Constitution Review Commission, CRC, which says that if a person is believed to have defected, if he has been found to be guilty of defection, then that person should not be allowed to get any remunerative for political post. They cannot also seek re-election because disqualification means you lost the membership of your house. So that means that seat is vacant in the house. So to fill in the seat, there will be by-poll elections. So these MPs, MLAs who lost their seat, they seek re-election and tend to get back. So this clause of re-election should also be not there for the remaining term of the house. So that should be done. Right. So these are some important this thing. So you can conclude by the need to bring in certain reforms. Briefly state this thing. If it specifically asks you about what reforms should be brought in, then you can elaborate this a bit more. Now beyond this, I was thinking there can be one more line of UPSC asking you a question where it gives you a twist and it asks us about the various important judgments of the court with reference to defection, or the role of judiciary with reference to defection. So here you can see the important judgments. I think you can see this for yourself, so you can take a screenshot. Right, so these are the two important pages. Now moving to the next aspect, that is hate speech and fundamental rights. Now UPSC has already asked us a question on hate speech, where it said that the question was actually about freedom of speech and expression, and it said that is hate speech part of one's right to freedom of speech and expression? So something to that effect. Now my question over here is a bit different. My question over here is asking us about the hate speech. It is increasing. We all know a lot of incidents that have taken place. So hate speech in India is a result of various facilitating factors. So what are the causes of the increase in the issue of hate speech? Then, in light of this, discuss the impact of hate speech and what suggestion should be given. Right, so effectively we are talking about hate speech. What is hate speech? We are telling us about the causes, then impact, and what remedial measures, what suggestions should be taken. So this is the structure naturally will go. Now I feel that you should prepare this answer very well, because this may sound simple, but the thing is that a lot of political events have taken place associated with the hate speech. So our political sentiments may get overboarded and be reflected in our answers, which we don't want it. So maybe we should best would be to reduce the examples that we give, and people are very polarized, so avoid that. Okay. So hate speech, as we have, it's the definition. Hate speech is the incitement of hatred, right? Primarily against a group of people defined in terms of race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, etc. And the issue of hate speech has become a recurrent phenomena, especially before the elections. With political things, it takes place. Then what are the factors facilitating hate speech? So proliferation of the social media platforms. It provided a platform for everybody to express their views. So earlier the platform wasn't there, now everybody can see it. Then there is YouTube and all those things, WhatsApp. So it allows. Then there are people who are, take advantage of these resources, and again that leads to the issue of hate speech. Okay. Then the role of media. the role of media, paid news. So we have a lot of examples over here, right, where the media has played a role, and unintentional negative portrayals have also, intentional or unintentional, it has taken place. I'm not giving example. Okay, next is there is lack of. Okay, so we're done with this thing, right? Then there is lack of legal clarity. We have various laws for hate speech. In fact, when you're writing your answer, you can actually give that in Indian context, we have the hate speech is a criminal offense under these laws. You can explain 153. Just mention section 153 of the IPC, section 295. In fact, Nupur Sharma was charged with this. Section 505. So like that you can mention that these provisions are there for hate speech. Here you can say that there is lack of legal clarity. There is no specific law per se for the issue of hate speech. Then you can also give a reference of the issue of elections. So around the time of elections, people, especially with political patronage, the hate speech takes place. So that you can say. And one more thing you can say is can't. Fine. So you can mention this. I'm just forgetting it right now. So, yeah. So this is it, right? Fine. So moving on to this thing. Okay. So this thing now, what measures? So we then you come to what steps need to be taken. So I was going through the issue of hate speech. So some recommendations have been suggested for reforming the Indian Penal Code and the Representation of the People's Act. So here are certain points that can be mentioned in your answer. So there is a need to insert a new section in form of 153. Then there is a need to train police officers and legal bodies for encouraging reporting of such content, and there is a need for awareness generation. So all these things can be mentioned. In fact, you can also add the communal harmony guidelines. You can use the points from there also, which I shared in the DNA also. Yeah. So yeah, one more point that I missed. So that is actually India being a soft state. So soft state means, this, especially when the rich, powerful political leaders, when they engage in something, me saying something on social media doesn't really affect so much, or any other person. But when a person of high political stature or somebody powerful, rich and powerful says something, their influence is much, much more. But the law doesn't apply to them. In a strong state, in a hard state, the law would apply equally to every single individual. But in a soft state, the rich and powerful tend to get away with things. So not very frequent, especially from the ruling dispensation, we don't find the hate speech thing, the laws being applied to them. It's only under too much of pressure is there, then that action takes place, and we don't feel that actual implementation of law takes place, right? So that aspect can be mentioned. Okay, so this is there. Now moving to freedom of religion, the next aspect. Now today actually I am asking you a question with reference to the role played by the judiciary, so important judgments of the judiciary over here. So that is one aspect, role of judiciary. Now there is one more aspect actually, that is the essential practices test with reference to this hijab controversy that had taken place. So that I will essential practices test, and all this will cover it in the next Monday. So that my promise is there. Okay, so today role of judiciary, and in fact it can be asked. So the question is very simple: examine the role played by the judiciary in addressing the concern for the right to freedom of religion. So this is very simple, right? You can start your answer by defining as the judiciary as the protector of the fundamental rights, which right to freedom is, and it is covered under the 25, 26, 27, 28, these laws. And the Supreme Court and the High Courts, basically, they have to play a very important role over here. Then you can list down certain important cases, some important judgments or some important examples where the court has played a role over there, right? So this you can mention over there. So practice of triple talaq, entry into Haji Ali, what is that? Haji Ali, this thing, and then Sabrimala case, genital mutilation. So this you can mention over here. Essential practices test, so that you can do. Now comes the conceptual one, more conceptual, that is rights-based approach to healthcare. Now this is, I think you can read the question, and let's come to why I'm picking up this thing over here. So one is that because of the COVID thing that took place, the issue of the weakness or the bottlenecks in healthcare sector was very clearly exposed, right? That is there. So that was exposed, and as a consequence of this, and maybe before this also, there has been a chorus, there has been a demand that the health should be made a fundamental right. For instance, we already have education, this education as a fundamental right under Article 21. So why not health? Health is so important. So that is there. So that debate, the issue of the shortcomings of the healthcare, then the UPSC focus on rights-based approach in the recent times. So therefore, thereby this question over here. So the idea is very simple, that if the subject of health is brought under the ambit of rights-based approach, or health is made a fundamental right, whichever way we pitch it, then what are the benefits? What are the pros and cons? So that is the aspect that we have to bring out in this particular answer. Okay. So first of all, let's come to the issue of healthcare only. What are the shortcomings with healthcare? So first of all, we know that we have the problem of, the 3 A's basically. So availability, affordability, accessibility, affordability. So one thing has to be available, then it should be accessible, and then it should be affordable. Now naturally, healthcare is neither of the three actually. You may, in the cities, you may still find the government public healthcare sector is doing well, but in the rural hinterland areas, the availability is also bad. Availability of doctor is very, very poor. So, with reference to a population, it is recommended for any country's population. So there should be one doctor for 1000 population. In India's case, it is at 1:1874. So there is a huge gap over here. And if I add to this, if we look at the rural areas, the shortcomings will be much, much more over there. Private doctors don't want to go there because it's not very remunerative. And same applies for the government doctors. Government doctors have an inclination to be in the cities. Okay, so they seek transfers and they want to come back over here. Then affordability. The out-of-pocket expenditure in our country is around 70%. So when somebody goes to the doctor, medicines and all those expenses is 70%, which is much higher as compared to other countries. It's very, very high. Now to solve this, naturally, this has been continuing for a very, very long period of time. And government also has been spending very limited on the healthcare sector. So public healthcare expenditure is only 1.25% of the GDP. The National Health Policy had recommended that it should be increased to 2 to 2.5% of the GDP. Now this in itself, 2.5 also is much less as compared to even the modern developed economies and even the sub-Saharan countries. So it's very, very poor in that regard. Right, so we have certain bottlenecks, and the idea is how rights-based approach can facilitate it. So next, moving to the rights-based approach. So rights-based approach is basically based on these principles known as panel. So the idea is that the public is provided a right. So right is, what is a right? That it is your adhikar, it is your right to seek healthcare. That the healthcare would be available to you. It will be accessible. If you don't have money, it will be affordable to you, or it will be available for free. It is your right, it will be provided to you. Now, if the right is being provided, So if somebody can claim something, naturally there is an aspect of legality. So there is a legal obligation on the government authorities. If Parliament says that the healthcare should be provided, then it has to be guaranteedly provided. So there is a legal obligation on the government to provide that. So legal obligation, it has to be done. So they have to do whatever it has to be done, be it budgetary allocation, be it increase in the number of doctors, whatever, it has to be done. And further, it allows the public, it empowers the public to claim that right. Right? They can claim that. And to claim, if they are empowered, they are participating. They are demanding something, they are participating. When the right is provided to each and everyone, so be it urban, be it rural, be it rich, be it poor, it is for everyone. So there is no non-discrimination and equality. So that is the idea of a rights-based approach. Right. So this will be much better than the present approach of, presently we have the entitlement based approach, where the government says that you are entitled for these benefits, or we give you an assurance that we will provide you all the services. Read the document on Ayushman Bharat scheme or read the National Health Policy. They say that the healthcare shall be provided on an assurance based approach. We assure you that we'll do it. That assurance has no value if it is not provided, it is not provided. There is no mechanism for you to claim. So rights-based approach is at a higher pedestal where the assurance is there, but if that assurance is not fulfilled, the person can claim it legally. Right? So that is what the question is telling us about. So this answer must have the aspect of, you can start the thing with reference to the context. Same approach as it was there in the first question. The context of why healthcare should be brought into the aspect of right-based approach, why this thing is being talked about. Then you can bring out about the shortcomings in the healthcare sector, and then elaborate as to how the rights-based approach can solve it. It's your flexibility actually, it's how you want to go about it, so that you can do that. And conclude on a positive note in this, nothing to contradict as such. Okay. Now moving on to the next question, that is pressure groups. And the reason to ask, one is UPSC is always asking us questions on pressure groups. Another thing is we have this farmer agitation and all those things that took place. So they are all pressure groups. Okay, read this question. Pressure groups, unlike political parties, are formed to address their immediate concerns. Whose immediate concerns? Pressure groups' immediate concerns. Discuss different methods adopted by the pressure groups to realize their goals. So this is straightforward, so it is 150 words. Okay, so let me explain this. Pressure groups to address their immediate problems. So we had the farmer agitation. What was it? Samyukt Kisan Morcha. So farmer pressure groups, agrarian pressure groups, so that is there. So they had a problem with the bill, so they mobilized the people. So mobilization had taken place. Then all that social media and all those things to influence the opinion, put pressure on the government and stop that bill wapsi. So that had to be done. So farmer. Then on similar lines, if we look at it this way, we had it was there in the news, this in Bombay there are these forest area around the metro side where they want to create a parking area. So this forest had to be removed. So for that again the environmentalists had taken a cause and people had mobilized for that purpose. So this is there, Chipko Andolan is there. So again, for immediate problems, you had the problem, people come together and do it. And obviously there are already associations on that light. Then there are other things also, for example, and Narmada Bachao Andolan is again there, very, very important. That must come in your answer also. This is one way of doing it. Then we have agencies like Amnesty International, human rights issue, they pick up that, but they don't really do a gherao or satyagraha, nothing like that. They basically form an opinion and try to pressure on the government. Or we have pressure groups like Association of Democratic Reforms, the intellectual movement. People don't mobilize for we want clean MPs and MLAs. Nobody is doing that. They just form an opinion. They keep writing literature. They put pressure on the authorities, election commission, etc. to act. So that way is there. Then there is Confederation of Indian Industries, right? So basically industrials. So these industries, they form associations. They have a problem with a particular thing of the policy. They try to influence that. They talk to the bureaucracy, they talk to the political leadership, they lobby and all that. They don't mobilize. So different approaches are there. Okay, so it is for their immediate problems. Now this is different from the political parties, because political parties is also for addressing the problems, but it is via a different means. Political party says, for example, there is BJP, there is Congress, and then there comes a new political party known as Aam Aadmi Party. They say that there is corruption, we bring us into power and we will solve the problems. Likewise, BJP says the same thing. India is under problem. Like, so they want to come into the power, and then they will say we will be controlling the government and we will bring about the reforms. So this is something that is long term. 5 years election take place. So that is a difference over here. So these are very specific to a particular thing, particular cause. So immediate problem, if it arises, then they mobilize. While this one is about staking a claim, it is also talking about problems. We will rectify it by bringing in good governance, but we will form the government. So when you are writing your answer, right, you have to establish in the very beginning that the difference between the pressure group and the political parties. Here we have the definition. If you want, you can take the screenshot. So pressure group and the definition of the political party. So since we only have the 150 words, so this aspect of pressure groups and political parties must come. Maybe you can have it in two ways. You can start by saying that both are important agencies of influence in a participatory democracy. But the way they deal with the situation is very, very different. On one hand, we have political parties which say that, which basically stake a claim on the government, and they say we'll bring about a reform. On the other hand, we have pressure groups which activate to address certain specific or immediate problems. For example, then you can explain give out some examples. Then comes the next part, that is discuss different methods. Now state what methods are adopted over here. Right, so this is there. Now this is again, we have this comparison chart. So as to how the pressure groups and the political parties differ. Right, so mobilizing, influencing opinion, use of the role of social media, advocacy of a change. For example, this transgender bill, disabilities bill. So we have the pressure groups on that effect also. So we never heard about a mass movement on that for disability rights. But there are people who have been working behind the scene. They have been lobbying to bring about a change. Likewise, first Confederation of Indian Industries. So this you can mention and then close your answer. I really don't find the relevance of a conclusion over here, but if you want, you can give a closure that it. The ends may be different, but pressure groups play a very important role in addressing the issue of which the people face, and they should be encouraged, something to that light. Okay, so this concludes the session. So thank you for streaming in to our channel IS Primers. If you have any doubts, you can mention in the comment section. Bye bye, take care and all the best.